And welcome back to the podcast. We are here with Will Basta from ascendecom.com, and they build and scale you a sustainable e-commerce asset worth up to 3 to 10x your investment in 24 to 36 months. And so Will has this Ascend Ecom logistics company. They're a wholesale distributor and an e-commerce investment management company. So we're going to be talking about e-commerce, Amazon, and all kinds of cool stuff that Will has going on. So Will, glad to be talking to you.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we're glad to have you. And so what is kind of your uniqueness and what's your passion these days?
Yeah. So I'll give you sort of some cliff notes about my background. I come from an extensive sort of tech industry startup background for about a decade. I was working for a lot of different companies in the health tech arena and just organizations that were sub 20 people and helping them sort of grow in the early stages. And I think there's a lot of parallels between that and entrepreneurialism. While I was doing that, I was getting involved in Amazon sort of early on, testing my failures or testing things out, having failures, having successes, etc. About 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, a lot of these so-called automation companies started popping up. Companies that have a lot of big promises about essentially building you an Amazon business, running it for you, and then splitting the profits, which sounds great on the surface, right? But as someone who's been working within Amazon prior to that, and what you can see on the internet, there wasn't that many good experiences out there, but it seemed like a good model on the surface. And so my business partner and I invested in 3 different companies that did that as a market test, unraveled all the inefficiencies in the industry and decided to do it ourselves, but do it right and legitimize the actual offering. So not really coming up with a new model, but taking a model that was there that could use a lot of improvement, everything from infrastructure down to or up to leadership, ethics, you sort of name it, and then starting it ourselves. And so that's essentially what we did is we flipped the script on Amazon seller management and built out a logistics company at the heart of the business, and then didn't outsource any part of the processes. And now we are today. It is my baby, which is Ascend. We are essentially 500 clients. We got 80 million in revenue almost at this point. We've got 2 warehouse facilities in Dallas, a third one opening up in Florida, an office in Los Angeles. And we build e-commerce assets and we operate them and manage them for investors. And so that's primarily what I do. I also am involved in real estate pretty heavily within Southern California and internationally. And I have my hands in a few other different investment pots on the VC side of things. But yeah.
Well, I love your mindset just right off the bat, because a lot of people pay lip service to reverse engineering and they only reverse engineer like that top level, right? They'll see some company and they'll sort of look at the marketing and the webinars and the social posts and everything and the sales letters and all the offer, and they'll kind of try to clone just what they see on the outside without doing what you did. Was you said you bought from even 3 different of these services and said, well, I'm going to go for it and be their client. And if they do a great job for me, great, then they've done what they said. But then if I'm unhappy with this or that, then like you said, you can kind of unravel what the mistakes are and then do better as far as kind of your own attempt at that. And like I've seen, so on, the Facebook ads, especially, I've seen a lot of these kind of automation offers, like we'll grow your YouTube channel, we'll grow your Amazon thing. And when I see that, just as someone who's never bought one of these offers, I'm thinking like, man, what happens if there is a slowdown in getting the product listed, or if Amazon kicks you out or something like that? And I'm thinking like what's the fine print? And if it was just that simple, if it was, throw $5,000 at it and grow it, why aren't they throwing their own $5,000 at it? So like what sort of horror stories did you see as far as when you tried this out?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the risks first. So we focus on Amazon FBA primarily, which is fulfilled by Amazon. That's Amazon Prime. That means products are getting fulfilled out of Amazon's warehousing. We handle them first, and then we prep them for Amazon and then send them there. And we focus on a wholesale model directly. Generally, the historic risks of that are if you're buying products and they just don't sell, right? So there's that risk, which I'll address in a second, because Amazon can pull data and then undercut you, right? And then it's like, oh shit, I just spent $5,000 on product, and here we are, Amazon's selling it $5 cheaper. This is going to take forever to sell through. That's just sitting money, right? That is a potential risk, and I'm going to address that in a second. And then there's just being on a third-party platform Amazon is a bully and they're a massive platform, right? And so at the end of the day, you can't control when they cross their wires, and sometimes they'll like do an audit or a random deactivation, which is very common with an early business, but also very easy to fix. But that's something to know to go into it, that you are on a third party platform. It's not our platform, it's theirs. We do everything by the book, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to get affected by Amazon doing their policy changes, et cetera. Those are all things that can be rectified and generally happen early on. In terms of the inventory issue, so historically, a lot of companies used to do drop ship or whatever, and those things are just simply non-compliant and non-sustainable. Wholesale done right is sustainable on the FBA model. The only thing with that is that you need to generally, people with a lot more capital can get more volume discounts. Therefore, their prices are cheaper, the margins are higher. Right? And so without having to risk all that money up front, Ascend is also a distributor. So we will source products at very, very, very high volume discounts, 500,000 at once. And then a client will be able to purchase a SKU from us. One SKU out of that 500,000 purchase could be like a $3,000 purchase, but you're getting the volume discounts as if you dropped $500,000 from that wholesaler, right? So that helps you get really, really great margins by putting capital up front. We actually, as of last week, some of our packages actually have inventory guarantees now, where if it doesn't sell through within 90 days, we'll buy it back from you or replenish it or refund you, which is actually no one else offers that in the industry. So that is a one-of-a-kind offering that's pretty exclusive and awesome. So that mitigates that risk. Why we actually do it as an investor, as a group, and not just do it ourselves. If John Doe, let's just put it this way, if John Doe and Jane Doe started an Amazon business at the same exact time, they would each have different trajectories. They would each have different products, and their businesses would appreciate at different rates. And they're both going to be worth something specifically. So every Amazon business gets opened with, it could be an entity, but an individual has to be behind that entity initially. So they are pieces of real estate, right? And so that being said, it's never smart to pump all your money. We have clients that come to us with a lot of money. They always get portfolios of businesses, because if you just focus on one Amazon store with all of your capital, you're just putting yourself at risk. And that's with any kind of investment, I believe, with real estate, et cetera. If you're going to put all of your eggs in one real estate investment, shit hits the fan and California has an earthquake and cuts right through. And then there's that, right? You need to make sure you're diversifying. Diversification is huge. I mean, that's how you get through economic hard times as well. But at the end of the day, why we do this and why we offer it is because each individual that's a client opens up their own individual store that they own themselves. And then we just operate it and share in the profit splits, right? And we can do this at scale, as opposed to us as a company opening up 500 different Amazon businesses internally. That's very, very complex. And that means we have to raise all that capital per store. We're essentially raising capital individually and then leveraging that for the clients in a win-win performance-based manner. And that's why we do it. It's also building an investor network. We're bringing value to each client. And at the end of the day, it could be their one investment with us, but they're going to come back to us if they want to invest again in something that we actually offer, right? And so it's building long-term value with clients as well. And I can go on forever about this answer. So I love answering that question, and I get that all the time. But that's the answer on that end. Was I missing something there? I'm not sure if I covered all your points.
I mean, you covered enough to answer the question and move the conversation along, right? And it's like I'm picking up on sort of your investor real estate mindset, where you're saying that so that like the advantage of going with you is like the scale, and that you're basically raising capital. And I like your mindset, a lot of this, because it seems like a lot of what you do and your thought process is centered around like, with any kind of investing, there's a million unknowns, right? And you say, well, instead of worrying about this or that or what could happen, you say, well, what are the risks and what are the objections for someone taking action on this? And let me figure out a way to remove the risk. And sometimes by saying, let's get rid of this and that risk, then kind of an interesting, fun kind of marketing hook reveals itself, where if someone might say, well, let me get all these facts and figures and all this information. And you say, you could learn all day long, but what if we remove these two of the biggest risks? And wouldn't you just like give us a chance and just realize that the system would just work itself out. So instead of worrying about, do I need to figure out all these facts, just remove the risk. And that kind of gets you most of the way there.
And that's essentially, we've always had a guarantee on the investment. When I say that, if someone invests, let's say 60 grand with us up front for an infrastructure like startup costs, which is roughly one of the costs for one of the businesses, there's multiple tiers. That investment is guaranteed that you will net that back within the timeline that we're together, or you can enact a buyback and we'll pay you the difference and buy back the business from you. So at worst case scenario, it's a secure investment in that sense. What we found to realize is that, yeah, this is a competitive market. We have a awesome infrastructure that makes our clients hyper competitive after X amount of months, because they're pretty much like partnering with someone who's got an established marketplace presence and wholesale and manufacturer presence. So it accelerates them into the ecosystem, but that doesn't take away the risk that there are inventory risks. You can't control buying trends necessarily all the time. You can predict them. And you also can't control when Amazon's going to come in and pull that data and use all their capital and then just undercut you on price and your product sits longer, right? So those are the biggest risks that we've uncovered over the last 3 years for clients. And in the last 6 months, we've been working diligently to mitigate that risk and find a way where we can actually make clients feel comfortable, even though a lot of them aren't even aware of that risk when they come into it. We try to be as transparent as possible, but that's probably the biggest risk is inventory not moving. And we found a way to work with specific wholesalers and manufacturers and also just with our leverage to be able to actually wash that risk away with that 90-day. As long as it's actively listed for 90 days, we will guarantee that it will sell, and if it doesn't, we'll replenish it. And honestly, I hate to say things are too good to be true, but that does add an awesome piece to investing in something like this, because the biggest thing is having money being held for a certain period of time and not generating as much as you'd like. But at the end of the day, the biggest two risks we're trying to take away for clients, given that it's an alternative investment, it's something, e-commerce isn't new, but it's new to sort of invest in it as an asset class, right? People are still sort of skeptical about, okay, there's real estate, there's stocks, there's all these traditional investments that have proven themselves over decades. E-commerce has been around for 20 years ish, whatever. Amazon, around that, but as an investment tier and an asset class, fairly recently. And so, high risk, high reward, but let's lower the risk and keep the reward high.
And it's like you're almost approaching it like almost like a bank would, right? Like you're saying, well, there's this kind of like this biz op basically, and here's the risk. And so you say, well, what's the absolute worst case? Right? Amazon bullies us out of our product listing. And then you kind of have your historical data and you say, well, let's say that happens, 2% of the time. Then you just say, okay, well, I know that 2%, that's the very worst case. That's my expense. But then I'll also go and explore these other opportunities to maybe like control that better, or to like keep that number low, or maybe like reduce it. And so it takes a lot of the fear and the uncertainty out of it, because you're just saying like, okay, here's what my numbers are. And so that way I don't have to really roll the dice. I know exactly what I'm putting in and what I'm getting out. And so this is it's really working my brain like abstractly to think about like different boxes and percentages and things like that. But as you know, the stories are always the most fun, right? So do you have any fun stories with all of these people that have come to you and taking you up on your offer and grown an e-commerce business? Because I'm sure there's all kinds of like cool industries, cool stories. So what comes to mind as far story-wise?
There's a lot of stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? There's a lot of cool success stories. We're not a perfect company. We weren't when we started, but we do right by clients, right? And so, we have multiple different, I'm just thinking of a couple of situations where there was like a rocky start with a client who came to us early and we didn't realize they had really, really poor credit. And that is a big factor in leveraging working capital for your business to grow to the degree where you can actually make a profitable Amazon business. And just to touch on a little bit further, in order to get business credit cards, you need to have good credit, and good credit it really starts with a lot of different things. You're probably well aware of that, obviously, right? And earlier on, we weren't vetting clients' financial backgrounds as much. So if they had X amount of cash to give us and they say they have X amount of working capital, we've learned since, this is years ago, but essentially that client had like a 500 credit score, horrible credit, and our hands were tied. And essentially what we did is we used our resources to clean and fix his credit, get it up to a 780, got him approved for about $50,000 in 0% funding for his business. And then we accelerated his business. And this all happened with about 18 months. He went from a $25,000 investment to literally being hands tied with fit credit to us to then netting an additional $18,000 all within 18 months. So somewhere around $50,000, which I'm bringing this up because I remember this specifically, and I remember him reaching out with gratitude. And those are the kind of things that are really impactful when you run a company like this, when you can see a difference and knew there was an issue and knew that you could bring value outside of what your general offering was. And then that actually had its ties into the actual direct offering. And then it became a success story with a lot of fruition. And then one other thing I'll touch on, we have a client right now that's doing really, really, really well on a private label product that is trending. I'm not giving specifics of it, but it is a very, very heavy product and has to do with hot and cold therapy in the wellness industry. And we were able to source a manufacturing deal recently, and they're making, 4 figures per sale. And it went from a store that was going very, very slow to PL coming into place, private label, when I say PL, which is just branding a product for them and actually taking off to the degree that no one ever really expected. And their numbers are awesome right now. And I keep thinking about that because that's something that happened in the last 30 days where we're just seeing tremendous growth. And these are things like, it's a market that is unpredictable. You have your downs, you have your ups. We do financial modeling, but you can't predict. You could have a down month, right? You could have a really, really slow month. You could have an awesome month. But when you have those months that come out of left field where the client makes thousands and didn't expect it, now that's some really awesome shit. And that's what makes us keep going on this kind of thing. You know what I mean? And obviously we share in that profit. It's an incentive on both sides to have a partnership.
So with all these things that you have going on, would you say, is there a secret to your success? Are you like a numbers guy? Are you take action quick and fail fast? Or like, what would you say sets you apart and why do you do so well?
I would say I'm not a numbers guy. I hate numbers. The opposite of me, I'm not the analytical side of the business. Yeah, mind you, there's 2 of us that started this business together. I'd say he's a little bit more on that side. But overall, cohesively, I think integrity from the top has brought us to where we are. And obviously, understanding that you don't cut corners. If you do things right the first time, or at least with that intention of doing it right, that's going to have a better ROI down the road than trying to cut corners and fast track things in an unethical or inefficient manner, because that ends up biting you in the ass. And so we've done things by the book, and we've done things with, an ethically sound approach ever since we started the company. And that's had a big impact on not only, how our employees interact with our clients, but, how our clients feel about us in general. I mean, I'm not saying every client's 100% happy. That's not the case all the time in any business, right? But we do right by people. And outside of the business sense, I mean, that is within business. That is a very, very integral part of having a successful business, is having integrity on the leadership level, especially when you get to the point where you have 700 clients like us. And so, yeah, I think I attest most of it to that. And then also acting quick on things. I don't want to, take what I just last said, but I say quick decision making. We don't sit on things if they feel right in the gut when it comes down to bringing like a strategic partner in place or something like that. We're not letting it sort of simmer. We make moves on things fast and we take action fast. That has a huge impact on the return it has on the business overall. So
I love it. Integrity, and that pays off in so many ways as far as the doing the right thing, going the extra mile, sense of right and wrong, and then acting fast. And you're so right there. And it's like, I mean, I'm sure you get just as frustrated as I do when you see someone who just like takes too long to make a decision and then their imagination diverges with reality, right? Because they play all these scenarios and they have all these wishful dreams. And it's like, but you don't even know what's real. You don't even have the data yet. So just do your proof of concept, your minimum viable product, your dry run, and then go on from there. And so, man, it's been super great talking to you and like getting inside your head a little bit. We want to make sure the whole reason you're here is to tell people about this offer, about your company. So can you tell us about Ascend Ecom? We mentioned it a little bit, but what's there and why should someone go and what's the offer?
Yeah, essentially we are a Amazon seller management investment company. We're a logistics company as well. So if you are looking to diversify your investments, or maybe have your first investment and tap into the $5 trillion industry of e-commerce, don't know where to start, don't have the infrastructure, need a partner in the space, that's when clients come to us. So you can find us at ascend_ecom for Instagram, or ascendecom.com. That's ASCENDECOM. And then you can book a call with us. We learn about your background, what you're sort of looking for in a passive income investment. And then we can see if there's a fit. We're not really salesy. It's more of, we only take limited clients per month. It's more of, is there a fit for the future as well? And do you feel comfortable investing in this kind of asset class? And we're excited to bring new investors on, because we have a diverse pool of people, from school teachers all the way to financial sector, retirees, veterans, you sort of name it. Our client base is pretty awesome, and they come from all different walks of life. So I'm excited to keep bringing on new people.
And I'm excited for you. And I'm amazed at all the cool things that you've accomplished. So we said ASCENDECOM.com, ascendecom.com, and ascend_ecom on Instagram is what you said. So, Will, as you know, you want to end things with a bang, not a whimper, right? We want to leave people wanting more. So as we wrap up our conversation and people go over to ascendecom.com, does any final parting words or advice come to mind? Is there something that just has really stood out for you as far as a lesson or quote or advice you wish you'd gotten 10 years ago? What comes to mind?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm 33. So if we're talking about 10 years ago, honestly, I would be reading a lot more than I did then. And that's very, very simple. But I read a lot more now than I used to. And I think, and even if it's short stuff, or even just watching stuff on YouTube, there's so much education out there outside of your general, collegiate programs or whatever, that you can sort of source at no cost. That's just beautiful. Whether it's books, you might have to pay a little bit, but digital stuff online, just read and dig into stuff, and you will find so much information. Be wary about what you read and who it's coming from, obviously. Disclaimer there. But you can find a whole world of different positions and things that you're interested in that you never knew was out there. So there's a lot more than your basic banker to engineer to doctor to lawyer out there. A lot of cool stuff out there to learn about. And so I encourage people to just, honestly stumble upon stuff and read. When you find something of interest, read. And that'll open up a vast new world of opportunity and things you're interested in.
I love it. It's so amazing how when we were kids, there was so much advice from like teachers and parents that we were just kind of brushed off. And it's like, oh yeah, they were right. Go to the library, read some books, be out there. And you hear about like how, Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or Zuckerberg, they spend their whole weekend reading. They'll have just a stack of like 50 books, and literally every weekend just like read through all this random stuff, just because what's the alternative? Watching a reality TV show or something. Like, instead fill your brain with the good stuff, with the information. And so what you should be filling your brain with moving forward is the text and the words and the information at ascendecom.com. We will see you there, and talk to Will and his team, and just have, like you said, find that good fit and see if it's a match, so that way they can become partners with you and grow your e-commerce business. That way you don't have to go it alone. That way you can tap into their connections and their advice and kind of their strategy. So ascendecom.com. We will see you there. And thanks, Will, for showing up and giving us all kinds of cool ideas. I love it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's been good.
Likewise.